All right. Up next, we have a panel session. This is to officially kick off our brand presence and loyalty track. The panel discussion is on how the pandemic redefined customer loyalty. So, as panelists, we have Bartosz Demczuk, Head of Global Consulting for CRM at Loyalty Solutions for Comarch; Vladimir Botzvadze, Advisory Board Member at Rethink Retail; we have Anmol Arora, Regional Director for MoEngage; we have Sandeep Gulati, Vice President, FairPrice Group at NTUC; and our moderator, Mr. Remus C., Senior Expert Consultant at Boston Consulting Group. So over to you, Remus.
Thank you so much, Jed. Can everyone hear me well?
Yep.
Give me a thumbs up. Yeah,
Hello, everyone. Ready to
perfect.
connect.
Great. Thank you for making time. And yeah, I'm excited to just have this conversation with you all. I guess let's go straight into it. So our topic is really around how the pandemic has redefined customer loyalty. I think we have a very interesting mix of panelists, and I look forward to the conversation that we will be having. So let's kick things off. Based on the last 2 years have been, I'd say, a blip in typical loyalty and data analytics calendar. But then, in your experiences, how have you seen the shift, or how have customer needs and demands changed, or in your words, in what you've seen, how has it shifted compared to pre-pandemic? Open the floor. Anyone who wants to start?
Well, maybe I will start. I'm maybe not the best person to start with in terms of talking about how it's changing, mainly talking from the technological perspective. But I would say digital is a must. And right now, and especially during the pandemics, during all of the lockdowns, the companies that were unable to be on the same channels as the customers, they were unable to meet the requirements to fulfill the orders in a very digital way, seamless experience, and all this stuff were simply failing. So, of course, we might say we are seeing huge cases where companies are not using technology in the right way. As we've just heard, like 30% of the customer database was never communicated, never sent any notifications, etc. So I would say that's the struggle, but same time we have to remember that our customers pretty much don't sleep when something new is coming up, and we always have to be in line with the latest market trends, because if we won't have it, our competitions definitely will have it. And what we've seen in the customer journeys, of course, huge pressure from the aggregators who are like overtaking those companies that were unable to meet the customer digital journeys. And of course, they were consuming huge part of their margins. And I would say that was the major shift we've noticed over the last 2 years, because you were either digital or you were out of the business. That was the major problem. But I will leave the floor to my colleagues.
No, that's in
Absolutely.
that. Go ahead, Vlad.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me join this amazing forum. And I absolutely agree with the first panelist. That digital is of paramount importance. And for example, social media is the single greatest reason why it has been put me on the map, because I put out content. And what I suggest brands is that they need to fish where the fish are. And for example, I work with so many brands, and they still question digital. I mean, I work with Fortune 500 brands. I work with so many associations, and they still question digital. I mean, the usage of digital has skyrocketed since pandemic. There are over 5 billion mobile users, over 4.6 social media users. And we are talking about billions of people using social media. And I truly believe that brands need to connect with their consumers, because and build relationships. And in order to build relationships with their consumers, they need to be in marketing and branding business, whereas the majority of companies focus on sales. So I suggest everyone to become publisher, not an advertiser on social media, because they need to provide educational, enlightening, and informative content. So I mean, there are 15 types of consumer needs. For example, products that need to be compatible, intuitive design, user-centered, affordable. Second is customer services need to be omnichannel transparency, 24/7 support, and third is emotional, that entails validation, empathy, trust, and fairness. And empathy is be all and end all nowadays, because if brands don't show empathy, they lose millions of dollars in revenue. So I suggest everyone to connect with their consumers in digital channels and to storytell in the right way.
Hmm. Now, those are interesting point. And you mentioned, going online, social media, looking at where you mentioned about going where the fishes are, right?
Yeah.
And I think from a retail standpoint, I'd like to hear from Sandeep also. Given the past 2 years, I've seen, how FairPrice have invested into reaching the shoppers, reaching the consumers. We've seen the shift into really taking a multi-channel, multi-retail format approach. Can you talk us through on what's the learning or how that journey has been on your end, Sandeep?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me, and welcome to the panelists here. It's an interesting discussion and very topical. So for us, it's been a journey which was a long time in the making from a digital transformation perspective. But so I think the pandemic, as everybody knows, has kind of accelerated that transformation, and from both from the consumer side as well as from the company side. People who are averse to doing any kind of online activity are now adopting the app, the website, and just because grocery is a daily essential, so you can't live without grocery. And so in this market, it became very important for us, as Vladimir was pointing out, to keep to have the trust and keep it, because a lot of times you could hear about price gouging and things like that, where the in-store purchase experience was not great because of lines, long lines, and things like that. Your online grocery slots were not available, and so literally had to reinvent the whole thing. But what it gave us was, yes, this is kind of the anomaly, the last 2 years, the demand side of things. But in a way, it helps us to model such events. So if we didn't have this event in the next 5 years, something like this happens, we at least have a data point now to learn from it and say, hey, something a demand shock or a supply shock can result in something which we have already seen in our lifetimes. It's probably the first time we are collecting data, at least in my experience. So I think in that sense, all of us had to think on our feet. All of us had to reinvent, even though we are established businesses. All of us had to where the consumer had, and more so now, because given now that we are going to the other side of the pandemic, where things may get a little more normalized, where people would interact. And your last speaker in the panel discussion talked about retention strategies, which are, and I've been focusing a lot on that, actually, engagement and retention. One thing to bring new customers, and the cost of acquisition is not going down. You take any social platform, you take any of the traditional email marketing campaigns, cost of acquisition is not going down. So you better keep your current customers engaged, as well as have some proactive retention strategies and reactive retention strategies as well. We're working on all these four fronts. Obviously, data is the big thing for us to drive all of these engagement strategies.
Hmm. Great. No, I totally agree, and I think that's a good point. You mentioned about retention over acquisition, and we'll get into monetization shortly. But I guess looking at acquisition right now, right? You mentioned cost of acquisition. It's not cheap, but retention is equally expensive. In your expert opinions and in your in your experiences, what is more for brands today? What would be more impactful? Retaining current pool of your customers or acquiring new ones, or is there a variation across different types of brands?
Yes, maybe I can take a dig at that. I'm Anmol. I'm the regional director for MoEngage. We are a customer engagement platform, and we are helping over 900 brands do better with their retention and engagement strategies, right? So in one of the previous sessions, we heard acquisition is something which a lot of brands focus on because it is sexy and it's important to get new customers in the top of the funnel. But retention and engagement is truly where you are trying to improve the lifetime value of these customers with personalization, with the right sort of technology, with the right sort of tools to analyze data behind these customers coming in from various touch points. And how do you essentially build that long-term brand loyalty with them? Some challenges that already do exist in this zone, and I can throw some light over there, is the information gap that we have about the customers, right? And this is because everything is often limited to an ID or a transaction. Brands need to be also in a position to understand preferences of these customers or the things like device types that they come through. We've often also seen some sort of a disconnect between online and offline identities of these customers. So there are technologies that can help you make this happen with a lot more ease and increase your retention and engagement over a period of time with personalized communications or communication channels or content that you're utilizing. And that's where you'll be able to extract the maximum value and deliver the maximum value to your customers.
Thank you for that input, Anmol. Any other thoughts from the other panelists on this point on acquisition, retention?
I mean, Remus, I think that every brand needs to have podcast nowadays and to invite experts and share knowledge with their consumers. And I think this is one of the best ways nowadays to stand out. If your brand is inactive across 8-10 social media networks, right, your brand will go out of business, which is like to put two and two together. I mean, you need to be active, and what does it mean? You need to increase marketing budget, for every channel, on Twitter, on TikTok, in podcast, and voice is a huge trend nowadays, and convenience and speed win all the time. For example, when I watch YouTube videos, I put down my mobile phone and I just listen in audio version, and I do other things simultaneously, So consumers, we need to listen to consumers. We need to connect with them. We need to build a relation with them. And one of the biggest customer acquisition ways is nowadays to put out content, blog posts, social
If I
media.
may,
For example, every major brand I work with in Europe now, for example, starting from Ericsson and other big brands that we collaborate with, they put out content, Even MasterCard and big brands, they create like infographics, share with their users, consumers, because they need to create, they need to be publishers, not advertisers. And this is the main thing every brand needs to understand in 2022, that they should not position themselves as advertisers, because this is the biggest way to go out of business. If you, for example, radio, print, TV are declining in value, and digital is number one way to market your brand and to connect with your audience and acquire customers through content creation.
Okay, so we'll take a pause there. Bartosz, you had a point?
Yeah, I would love to question that because, of course, I fully agree. There's like the content is super important, but also from our experience, we've seen a lot of brands that were having their own channels with practically zero views because they didn't look like they were real. And in many cases, you should also question whether you are going to put your own content or rather focus on the collaborations with those who are, well, considered as a trusted media. I fully agree. For all of the ATL channels, those days are gone. We have to really find the new channels, which are, of course, digital, and work on them. But also I've seen a lot of mistakes where at certain level, the big brands were buying views on their YouTube videos because they were looking so depressing with having like dozens of views. At the same time, production costs were really huge. So I would really review what's our brand promise, whether we are supposed to generate such a content which is going to be heated, viewed by our customers, or we are just creating, empty shelves of the YouTube videos or something like that.
An interesting point. Thank you for that, Bartosz. Sandeep and Mo, do you want to chime in on this interesting conversation?
Well, I guess the thing is that while I understand content, and I think the comment was made that it has to be relevant for the sake of content, you don't just create content. And then where do you stop? Because everybody's creating content. Everybody's using Google ads. Everybody's using Facebook ads. So the cost of acquisition is going to get driven up, irrespective. Everybody is going to adopt the single. How do you stand out? How do you engage with the customer at each touch point? You cannot say, yes, content is important for bringing in new customers. As I said, new customers is great to have because you don't know much about them anyway. And you want to see what's going to stick, what's the current trends, and therefore that's what you go with. But the customers you have more information with yourself, and the content there needs to be very personalized.
Yeah.
That's where you kind of talk about recommendation engines. You talk about things which are which are more engaging to the current customer, because the customer, once they are engaged with your brand or with your product or services, wants to be treated differently. They want to be engaged, and creating that content on YouTube, okay, for that customer, but what will stick to them is how you engage with them on a one-on-one basis, because they're giving you your data. Nobody is going to discount that first-party data is now king, based on third-party cookies and all the iPhone, iOS 15 restrictions. You just are not going to be able to collect more information unless the customer wants you. If your customer is already engaged with you, your brand, your services, you better use that data. And that's what we are focusing on, to say, hey, we have enough data. We got to make sense of it and deliver the right message, deliver the right product and service at the right time and the right channel. So those are things which you cannot run away from beyond just the content.
Now, I like that point. And maybe just throwing in another perspective here on we talked about the different channels and different platforms, right? I guess now another uptick that we've seen in pandemic would be driven by the pandemic, was the increase in online shopping. And now more and more these platforms, they are selling their online stores as a medium of communication as well. So in your thoughts, and maybe also like to on your end, Sandeep, and also on Anmol, to get your insights on this, how do you see the role of typical touch points shifting, where social media clearly has a role, e-commerce platforms, the likes of Amazon, Alibaba, they've introduced live stream as one more conversion vehicle during their mega campaigns. All of these depend on, as Vladimir mentioned, all of these depend content, but how do you then tweak the content so that not only do you engage your customer, but also convert them into buyers? Because ultimately, for each of the brand, coming out with content is good, but then unless you convert all your traffic, all your visitors, it does nothing for your brand, right? So I'd like to get your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. I think I'll add to what was mentioned earlier by Sandeep, right? It's end of the day, it's all about personalization, whether it's top of the funnel or when the user is more towards the mid and bottom funnel. So for top funnel activities, you of course do have ways in which you can profile your audiences and try to reach out to them with more relevant messaging. And this is again with the data that you have, right? So the user comes to a brand's website or an app and performs certain activities on those apps, looks at specific products. You have this information already. How do we use that to re-engage these users on social media platforms, which could be things like Facebook or Google, for instance, and continue to bring them further back into the funnel? Now, once they do come back to your apps or websites, which are usually a brand's owned and operated properties, that's when you start to also understand what sort of channels do they prefer to be engaged on. And in technical terms, we call it the most preferred channel. So if I am a user and I have opted into email and SMS and push notifications, and I have in-app messaging also, there could be certain channels where I am a bit more, I have a preference versus Sandeep, for instance. So how do we identify that with something called as intelligent path optimization through machine learning capabilities? Or how do I understand what's the best time to send these communications? Because while everyone's putting a lot of brain power in creating the best content to engage that particular individual, are we even sure that these are getting delivered? Are we sure these are getting delivered on the right device at the right time? So there are situations where you're utilizing, again, machine learning algorithms to understand what's the best time to send these notifications to these users, and then continue to move them further down the funnel. Of course, there are multiple instances during this journey which can be indicative of how you can improve the conversion rates for these users, depending on what sort of conversion goals you have set for the customers. And that is all to be done by analyzing user data and making it actionable, because by now, most of the brands do have the data, but end of the day, actions are king. So how do you utilize this data? How do you make it actionable with those insights and communicate with the user at the right time through the right channel with the right content?
Now, just building on that or picking up on your point, Anmol, in terms of analyzing the data, using it, can any of the panelists, share your experiences from a high level or top line practical example of how do you make sense of the data that you currently have? We've seen the insight that 98% of all the available data right now were really built within the last decade, right? That we're sitting on. So with that much data, how do you mine through the haystack to come up with practical insights to drive business, to drive growth for the business? Because data used to be sexy, but right now, for some brands, for some companies, they think, oh, data, it's just overkill. So for any of your experiences, maybe a tip to our audiences, how would you advise brands to go about, or companies to go about the amount of data that they have, and then how do they shift it to something, or how do they utilize it best to make something to make something of value out of that data that they're sitting on?
Sure, Remus, if I can take this one, and I will be very brutal and very honest. You are talking about data which are sexy. I will say data are painful and data are headache. Why? Because they're disclosing all of the previous mistakes. And I fully agree, like 98% of data were created recently because finally we can trace every single touch point, every single behavior. And the point is here, like, don't feel bad for making mistakes, but simply have all of the lessons learned. And from the practical perspective, I would say most of the promotions are margin killers. And we are learning that in the long-term perspective. If you are trying to bundle the products, again, you are shifting the certain customer behaviors. Even right now where we have certain projects in Europe, and of course, due to the situation in Russia, Ukraine, there's a boycott of certain products. We are perfectly seeing how, for example, some of the products from the top FMCG companies are trying to being replaced by another one. And actually, that's the time where, thanks to having all of the data we have, we can understand what's the customer pattern, and we can, before drama happens, we can recommend the replacement products for either out of stocks or, like, for example, for those products that are not supposed to be bought by the customer. So my perspective is, again, very honest. We should take the data, we should see all of the mistakes we've done over the data, we should easily use AI, not only for the basic marketing, classic channels, but even, for example, for defining our own products. Because, once we are going for the R&D for any product from the FMCGs, like, it's a great journey, we are doing the focus groups, but actually it's not as good as having all of those data versus the customers, potential segments of the customers. And then we are redefining the product how we are placing the product, what are the descriptions of the product, even these hashtags we are going to use for these products. That is simply all coming from the AI. And honestly, like 9 out of 10 products which are freshly launched to the market are failures because we are not using the historical data. So again, don't feel sorry for making mistakes, but simply use the data to understand them and predict the future. And finally, we have all of the tools. So no excuses. That's my point.
I like that point, Bartosz. Any other builds from the 3 other panelists?
I mean, by collecting customer data, you are better able to segment and personalize your promotions. And based on browsing and purchase history and activity on your website, right? You can figure out which customers will be most likely to respond positively to your certain sales.
You're right. Absolutely.
And for example, some statistics, 62% nowadays, global customers are worried about their personal data being used for marketing. And for example, 79% of consumers are more likely to provide personal information to a trusted brand, for example. Some useful statistics to share,
No, thanks for that statistics, and actually, that's a good segue also to my next question. We've said that majority of the data we're sitting in now were recently acquired, but now with all the privacy concerns and all the measures that these big tech companies have introduced, Sandeep alluded to it, where Apple now has their privacy tracker, where they give the power to the to the user. Facebook, Meta, they have started to work around that. Google as well. Given the data privacy concerns, I have two-pronged question to this. One, how do you think brands can still get the value out of the re- reduced amount of data that they have access to? And secondly, also, given the shift in consumer behaviors now, where we more and more they're spending time on their mobile, either on social media, on purchasing on e-commerce platforms, or even ride hailing sites, aggregators, super apps. How do you think how do you think this will impact future acquisition and future use of data to really have an understanding and to drive better loyalty programs for the consumers and for the shoppers?
I'll start actually, given I can lead the loyalty analytics for the company. I think it's not a rocket science basically in terms of privacy. What's happened over time is that we collected a lot more data than was needed, and we started sharing this data at the expense of customers' trust, and they started getting bombarded with useless messages and data leaks and data hacks, all the doing of the industry as such. So the pendulum has swung the other way. Governments have become more conscious about data sharing and data leaks. And if you think about Singapore itself, while PDPA, the PDPC is actually very conducive to sharing of data, they realize they are on the side of the consumers, because at the center of everything is consumer. If we don't get their trust, if we don't get their trust both from a service point of view, and data is an asset. So it is somebody, yeah, we own the data, but it's an asset that we borrowed from the customer. So if it's almost like a bank, if you can't rely on your own bank for all your digital or monetary assets, then how can customers rely on you for their data assets with the different brands? So it's all about trust. So you got to build that trust, make it more relevant. As I said, there's nothing shying away from first-party data, and I wouldn't agree with the fact that we aren't reducing the volumes of data. If anything, it's going up with the various touch points, with the apps, with every moment, because we haven't even captured a whole customer journey to begin with. If you think about somebody entering the store and going from one aisle to another aisle to another aisle, and then actually, ultimately buying something, that is not mapped out completely. You don't want. Again, the point is that you don't want Big Brother to be watching you on your on over your shoulder every time you step into to a grocery store. But if you can say that, you can make the message more relevant. Hey, I'm interested in making pasta today, and I serve you a pasta sort of recipe contextually. At the point when you are buying all the pasta ingredients and pair it with the wine, then the customer's trust is won.
Hmm.
So it has to be contextual, and I think a lot of times my managers talk about behavioral science. I think that, again, it's not something new. We want to talk about data science merged with behavioral science to really understand your customer. And I think the data as a new oil, it's important to use it more responsibly.
Fair. No, those are great points, Sandeep. So just a follow up on that, right? Because in terms of the looking at the different kinds of loyalty programs, point systems, super apps right now, what are your thoughts in terms of collaboration between programs? So, for example, in Southeast Asia, um, NTUC FairPrice has their own Plus program, right? But now you also appear in, let's say, food aggregators like Food Panda, Grab. Same thing with in Europe, where Amazon is linking up with Delivery Hero or whatever other super apps. So, what are your thoughts on that? And will we see more of these kinds of collaborations, pres- uh, presenting better value to consumers, or do you think that this is eventually going to, to unravel itself?
And I think that's a great point. Actually, I'll start and then I want to stop and hear everybody else's opinion as well, because I'm a big believer in partnerships, data partnerships, and again, from it could be very diverse set of industries. So you touch upon Plus program which we run, and we don't just restrict ourselves to food, which is obviously our biggest anchor kind of a merchant, FairPrice, Kopiki, and other brands. But we also partner with likes of Caltex, which is a gas station and which runs a gas station chain, and then with Exxon, with other partners which are local brands, with the different partners which cater to young families so you have to choose your partnerships based on the consumer base you have built over the years. You got to curate your partners, and when you curate those partners, the data that comes out of that partnership is amazing. So you are, in a way, you kind of get around purchasing third-party data by actually having the data in-house through those partnerships and those transaction points. So I think that those the partnerships are going to be one of the new, either not new trends but trends. Because I just go on off on a tangent for a minute. So think about banks now. Banks are not the traditional banks anymore.
Mm,
Technology companies are becoming banks. You take the likes of Apple Pay, Google Pay, and the banks are becoming technology companies. So when you talk about these partnerships, banks want partnership with non-banks, and non-banks want partnership with banks. So I think this partnership model is not new, and will probably continue to evolve.
yeah, Bartosz, you have some thoughts on
Yes, and again, I might be saying something very, very unpopular. As you know, usually we are saying, okay, so those CEOs are saying we are not tech company, we are not going to invest too much in technology. But according to your question, Remus, so are we expecting to have more this kind of coalition, this kind of Amazon super apps? Well, let me say like that: all of those companies who are building right now coalitions and the super apps are those who are heavily investing in the technology while others were not doing that.
it? Mm,
And if you're going to ask me if it's like the kind of wake up call for the big companies, okay, let's build our own super app. Well, you have to really try at least 4 times harder than 10, 6, 7 years ago because you've missed your opportunity. That's the
mm,
thing. So every single time when I'm invited to the boardroom, in some of the cases I'm kicked out after a minute or so, but maybe the truth is too brutal that technology is a must. So we are either becoming leader in the tech Or the only thing which is left for you is to plug in to someone else who is owning the data, owning the process, owning the customer. And then we have all of those headaches. Okay, so, well, I'm going to give away my 20, 30% of the margin. Well, yes, because those guys are enabler and they have those million of the customers plus, right? And that's the problem we have right now. So sorry to say that, but technology, unfortunately, is a must right now.
No, I couldn't agree more. And it's more of, I think it's how you leverage the technology rather than investing in this technology just because just so you have the tool. Guys,
100% Remus.
I'm conscious of the time. We have five
Remus,
minutes.
Remus, you
Yes.
mentioned that technology is a must, and the brands need to fish where the fish are. And if TikTok is of paramount importance in 2022, brands need to be active on TikTok. For example, when I ask my clients to pay attention to the channels where the great things are happening. I'm not asking my clients to dance on TikTok, but they need to create entertaining content. I mean, for example, 10 years ago, everyone was neglecting Twitter. People say no. There is a great quote, for example, by Lev Tolstoy. Everyone thinks of changing the world. Nobody thinks of changing himself. And it is the same in business, in marketing. Brands go out of business because they neglect digital. It is true reality, sad reality, unfortunately. And for example, now 17 years old makes $100,000 per year through TikTok by content creation. So everyone capitalizes on social media, whether you are a huge brand or someone or a startup. Everyone reaps benefits, from digital. Everyone.
Agree. And I think I just layer on that. I think it's also recognizing which platform is a fit for your brand, because I'm sure that a lot of the brand owners, brand managers, would be quite wary also of thinking about, hey, how does that platform impact the equity of my brand, or are my target consumers, target market on that brand? Um, we have 3 minutes left. Let me just have a quick check on our Q&A section. For the audience, feel free to type up your question on the Q&A section, and maybe some final thoughts from the panelists before we open it up before we take a look at the Q&A. Any final thoughts on this, from maybe to guide that for the in the given that now we are settling into the post the peak of the pandemic, how do you see the behaviors have shifted, and what other shifts in the behavior of consumer loyalty, acquisition, retention, the retail landscape? What other shifts do you foresee that is coming in the in the coming months or years?
Yeah, I can go and share some insights over there that we are seeing across the various brands that we work with. I think customer expectations for speed and decentralized supply chains, that's something that we've already also touched upon in the beginning of the conversation. Customers eventually want simpler and faster service. They're also looking at a lot of local versus international. That mindset has come through. And they expect brands to know them better, because now that the shift has happened onto digital, everyone's making more purchases on digital, and by that logic, sharing their digital footprint. They want the engagement to be a bit more personalized and a bit more meaningful. We discussed about bringing in different layers of technology in the previous conversations. I think we may all agree that at the end of it, customer centricity mentality and that can-do mentality should be part of the DNA. That should be set firmly. That should be the baseline. If that doesn't exist in any of the brands at the moment, no amount of data and technology can save them in the future. When you look at how else can we increase the customer loyalty as we continue to scale up, there are new channels like WhatsApp, Line, Kakao, Zalo, for instance. This is helping brands with the speed of communication. It's helping brands stay out of the usual email, SMS clutter where a lot of brands are already communicating. So how do we get to the consumer fast and with more relevance? And this is where a lot of brands are beginning to explore bringing these as part of their engagement or CRM strategies. Um, Plus, utilizing machine learning in a bit more advanced manner by using algorithms like predictions, which can help you make more sense of your data, predict things like the likelihood of someone to convert in the next 7, 14, 21 days, or the likelihood of someone to uninstall your app. These are insights brands are already trying to get from the existing data that they have. As Deep had also mentioned earlier, we have more than enough data. We just don't have insights. And if we have insights, we can't make it actionable. If we fill those gaps, we're going to be on a much better track to build loyalty and long-term relationships with our customers.
Great points, Anmol. Any builds from
I would
Bartosz?
add that we need to build an omnichannel customer experience, and personalize and humanize customer engagement. We need to use automation to achieve great customer service experiences. And nowadays, over 30% of consumers discover brands through word of mouth. So if we build great experiences, then it has a snowball effect, and we will gain benefits, reap benefits through word of mouth marketing. So we need to connect with our consumers. We need to build great experiences. We need to put out content. We need to put out content that is in our consumers' best interest, not in our best interest. And if we are focused on sales, nothing great will happen. So we need to be audience centric, customer centric, and the long term thinkers.
Okay, no, that's a great point. Final thoughts, Bartosz, Sandeep?
Yes, so across all of those things which are quite obvious from the post-COVID reality, I think there's one more element we should remember. Customers became less forgiving. Every single mistake we are making can cost us a relation with the customer because we have all of the other brands digital. So it's not like going from store A to B and you are like connected because it's local. It's global. It's everyone is online. So right now, if you're making mistakes, be sure that customers can easily switch between the brands. And it's really difficult to regain the trust after mistake, unless you are doing this kind of service recovery in real time, not like in weeks, or you are asking the customer to wait for like 45 minutes on your call center. So one remark from my side.
Great point.
Yeah,
Before
I
we
guess
end,
the
Sandeep?
last thing from me, all the points agreed to the omni-channel, omni-vertical experiences have to be unified. The customer first and the customer, customer engagement and any pain points have to be addressed real time. I think we're still at the very inception of our understanding of the customer journey and the motivations that it have. We have to look at it a customer as a long-term, with a long-term view. The lifetime value is obviously a number attached to them, but what does that really mean from keeping them engaged day in, day out, year in, year out? Loyalty programs are great, but again, the competitive advantage is kind of subjective in that sense. But if you have clients, if you have your customers who are engaged for 5, 10 years, don't discount them. Keep them engaged. The challenge that becomes is your 20, 30, or 50% of them are engaged and loyal. What about the rest 50%? Why are they disengaging or disengaged? And we have no answers for that.
Great points. Well, that's all the time that we have for this afternoon. I'm sure we could go on and on about this, but it's been a pleasure hosting you guys, and I think if anything, we will definitely be in touch, open for questions offline
All right.
outside of this panel. Jed, back to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Remus. So thank you to the rest of the panelists also for that great discussion. So yeah, as Remus said, you can reach out to any of the speakers we have here under the People tab. You can reach out to them directly and ask them questions. But specifically for Bartosz and Anmol from Comarch and MoEngage, respectively, they have their specific booths over at the booth section. You can catch them there together with their colleagues. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All right, up next, we have a keynote by, again, welcome back to the stage, Demczuk, head of global consulting for CRM and loyalty solutions at Comarch. His keynote is on loyalty as a penalty. So over to you, Bartosz.
Yes, thank you very much. So I will make this story very simple. And I think over the years, I have like just a few minutes. I will make it very, very simple, even without slides, because slides are not representing the story I'm willing to share. So over the years, we've seen many programs that were called like spend 2 years with me, and I will give you something that is value as closest to peanuts, which is nothing. And that was a major mistake of most of the loyalty programs. We're focusing on the one group of the customers, the gatherers, who are willing to collect those small amounts for the very long time to get the benefits. But then suddenly, out of nowhere, aggregators came, the discount portals, the Groupon of this world, and they were actually demolishing loyalty programs. Why? Because they were not effective. They were unable to reward the customers in a proper way. And usually when I was showing slides, I have one slide of the Santa Claus looking for the gifts in the garbage bin, because in many cases, unfortunately, the programs were just like that. We were giving back leftovers to our customers. We're not focusing on real value. And in many cases, if you are understanding the loyalty program properly, the journey to get the prize, to get the reward was long, painful, and even the redemption process was unacceptable. I will give you one story of one of our former customers who was like offering rewards at the end of the year, where we have the peak season, and many of the customers were willing to reward, well, buy the gifts for the Christmas, for end of the year, for the Chinese New Year, for any occasion. And because of the redemption platform was absolutely unprepared to support such a peaks in the sales, most of the customers were extremely disappointed because they were unable to redeem the prizes. And same time, what was the most scaring thing for me to see was like smiling face of the CFO face saying, well, luckily we can shut down that amount of points because they're about to expire. So if your program is all about decreasing the liability of the points without rewarding the customers, you shouldn't do it, because you are having absolutely other effect. And as we've spent a lot of time talking about the digital world, about the content, about YouTube's, about all of the channels where people are sharing their opinions, we might end up at the very end of the chart with the satisfaction of the loyalty programs, which are well close to zero. So if you would ask me if I'm willing to do a new type of loyalty program and I'm going to reward the customers, and I think we've been touching this subject of the data, I think we should start with that. Very clear story saying, okay, so once you are participating in the program, it's obvious I'm doing that to learn to know you better. But there's a trade-off. Since you are giving me a lot of your information in the same way as Facebook or other social media are using your data to monetize it, I'm doing that, but within my own brand. Of course, it's very tempting to monetize data, especially if you are a retailer and you are talking about all of the FMCG brands dying to get the details about the customer behaviors, demographics, patterns of the behaviors. But let me go with something basic. So we are getting those data within our own brand, and we are trying to do the proper bundles of the product. We are trying to show you the long-term goals with the real value. We are going to surprise you. We are going to engage you. We are going to treat you as a better customer because you are part of our loyalty program. And of course, I know it's like super obvious. And if you are looking at the journey of the loyalty 1.0, when it was done for the airlines 30 years ago, it didn't change much right now, actually. Well, but the thing is that today, because of those aggregators, where we are talking about this EDLP, those everyday low prices approaches, where of course customers are hyper price sensitive, it's very difficult to build loyalty programs. Moreover, some of the brands are clearly neglecting of the loyalty program, saying, well, we are focusing on the other aspects, again, the price. But from my perspective, and from what I'm seeing right now across many customers I'm working with, if you are going for this crazy everyday low prices race, it's like racing to the bottom. You are decreasing your margin, especially in the digital environments where part of your margins are taken away by the big brands. And what we see at the end of the journey is like you might be either the first, being the cheapest, which is not good at all, frankly speaking, or even worse, you might came up as a second, which means you are not even the cheapest retailer. You are pretty much having no money for the R&D, you are compromising the quality of the service, and there is no space for the real loyalty. So what is the next big thing in the loyalty from our perspective? And again, I know that I'm a software provider, so sorry for that, but I strongly believe in the AI technology, which is helping us to optimize all of the touch points with the customers, find the savings, and again, be able to increase the wallet share of the customer spendings within our own brand. And I would say that's the most important element right now. As long as we can optimize it, we can gather most of the transactions from the customers within, of course, our category, stayed within our brand. I think we can really start a great loyalty journey. And again, AI is helping us to advise those products which are missing. But again, there's a thin red line between sensitive data, which customers don't want to go for. And for example, if you are suddenly announcing to your customers, well, I've just learned that you have the diabetics, I think we are losing a lot of trust. And even the examples from dunnhumby and Tesco, well, we can predict that you are pregnant. Well, how creepy is that, frankly speaking? We should never be able to announce it publicly out loud that we know something about you that not necessarily know about yourself. And over the years, we were analyzing data for like 410 million customers worldwide. We had great discoveries, but most of them were just for us. We are never going to tell to the customer about your problems, about, well, we are seeing opportunities. Maybe it's time to don't buy this chocolate bar because you had too much sugar. Let's go for something healthy. Well, trust me, that's the last promotion you will ever do for this particular customer. So from our experience, if you are doing that in a smart way, lifestyle-based, and you are openly, clearly asking the customer about their preferences in a very polite way, you will have win-win scenario. In any other case, it's just a creepy loyalty. It's not the way you are willing to be rewarded. It's not the way that your CFO is willing to invest money into the loyalty program. So that's my 10-minute slot. Of course, I'm more than happy to invite you to our booth where we can tell you more about these details, where we can show you some live examples, how we are getting any data, and again, having surprising effects about that. So more than happy to invite you there. And of course, more than happy to invite you for the face-to-face sessions where we can talk about all of those brutal elements of today's loyalty programs. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Bartosz. Really great discussion. So yeah, as if you have any questions specifically for Bart or the Comarch team, they have a booth over at the booth section, and you can catch Bart there together with his colleagues. Thanks again.
I promise to be very polite.
All right. So that is a wrap for our brand presence and loyalty track. So see you in the next track, everyone.